25% of people earning over 100K say they live paycheck to paycheck. And that number jumps to 41% when we look at those earning between 300K and 500K. And this proves that simply earning more doesn't mean you're gonna do better financially. And sometimes earning more just means you're gonna spend more. About 56% of Americans cannot come up with $1,000 if they needed it for an emergency from savings. So even though some people look like they're doing well, it doesn't mean they actually are. I'm a mom of two living in the UK, and I come from Romania. I do not come from a wealthy background, but one thing I did in my 20s, as I was starting to earn more, I was absolutely spending more. It really took some time for me to kind of recalibrate and to learn that, living within your means isn't about deprivation. It's not about being extreme. It's not about never buying anything. It's just about having control over your finances. And there are a few things I learned that I want to share with you. Looking poor doesn't mean you have to look broke. Doesn't mean you have to wear clothes with holes in. It doesn't mean you have to just give up on your appearances entirely. And I know for myself, I do like getting dressed. I do like fashion, and it's something I've always enjoyed. But what I don't enjoy is spending hundreds of pounds every month on clothes that just get in my wardrobe, stay with tags on, and just never get worn. Or overspending on items just because they're trendy. And I do think online, sometimes you see these two extremes. Either you overspend and you give into all the trends, you buy all the influencer stuff, or you're very extreme on the other end. You're super frugal, you don't get haircuts, you reuse your floss, you cut every corner. But actually, I think with anything in life, a bit of balance can be really valuable. It's that, not wealth. I think a lot of the kind of rich looking lifestyles that we see out there, especially on social media these days, they are actually not wealth. They're not a person who has a lot of money in their bank account. It's just someone who looks like they have wealth, but they're actually very deep in debt. As of 2026, the total US credit card debt has surpassed $1.25 trillion. And when we look at the kind of average household, a lot of families are starting to pay more interest on their credit card debt than they do on groceries every single month. And the average cardholder has about $6,580 in debt. And the average minimum monthly payment for their credit card debt is about $258. So I think when you look on social media, it looks like so many people are doing so well, buying a lot of things, but that doesn't mean they can actually afford the lifestyle. Sometimes it just means they put it on a credit card. I also learned that the richest people are usually the most ordinary looking. This is something I learned in the Psychology of Money book, which really made me realize a lot of things. There's this story in there about Ronald Reed, who was a Vermont janitor and gas station attendant, who just by saving money and living below his means, managed to save $8 million by the time he passed away. So some people will look at someone who drives a 10-year-old car, for example, and they'll think that person's not doing very well, or they might be struggling, but that might not be the case at all. Maybe that person is just either very frugal or they just care about saving more than spending on appearances. When we were in our 20s, we did buy a new car, and what we realized was that for one, it depreciated in value a lot in the first couple of years, and also because we were so young, I feel like we didn't have a clear path, like we didn't have a clear plan of what we were gonna do next. Within a few years, we actually decided to move from Romania to the UK. And so that car we couldn't take with us because it's just harder logistically. The steering wheel is on the other side of the car and it just makes it harder to drive here. And so we had to just sell the car before we moved to the UK. And that meant that we actually lost a lot of money by doing that because the car had depreciated in value already. So now when we bought our car here, we actually bought a second-hand car from someone else. It was still in great condition. It wasn't very old, but it had already depreciated from the previous owner. And so the value of it right now, well, of course it still drops. It doesn't drop as steep as when you buy it new. And it also meant that we could get a decent quality car for a good price, and we just used our savings to get it so that we don't have to worry about it, so that we can have 0 monthly car payments. Because what I learned from my research is that the average monthly car payment in the US right now is about $767 per month, and that's just the average. And I noticed it's kind of a similar average in the UK as well. So I think Cars are one of the biggest traps we can fall into because it can cost us thousands and thousands of dollars. And if you took that money that you pay on the monthly car payment and you put it in investments, for example, in time, that will compound so much. And it gives you just a lot more flexibility and financial freedom than having a new car on your doorstep. And recently it's been said that actually auto debt, so getting a car with car payments every month, is now the second highest expense for most people, just after mortgage or rent. The Pinterest playroom trap is something I definitely fell into when I first had kids because, well, you get pregnant, you're getting ready for your baby, and the first thing you do is just go on Pinterest and get inspiration. Maybe not so much nowadays, because I feel like whenever I go on Pinterest now, it's just full of these AI looking pictures. But back then, that's what I did. And there's nothing wrong with having a playroom that's lovely and set up and maybe looking aesthetically pleasing if that's what you enjoy. But I think what I realized is that kids don't necessarily need a separate playroom. And what I found is that for us, actually, we don't have a dedicated playroom for them. It's just that side of the living room, basically. That's where we keep all the toys. And to be honest, if we did have a playroom, a separate room just for them, I'm not sure that they would actually play in there because they always want, or at least my kids, they always just want to be with you. They always just want to be next to you. And so I think having it part of the living space means that you don't have to spend extra on your mortgage to have an extra room just for them to play in, because it might just end up unused anyway. And there's also the latest pram trap, because yes, you have a baby and you think, they need this really expensive pram or a fancy baby buggy, and actually they really don't. What we ended up doing with both kids was we got pre-loved prams from someone else. The first one was actually a hand-me-down from family for our first baby, and then for our second baby we just bought it from someone else. And I think we bought an eye candy sort of pram. That's what I found on Vinted. I think a new one would have cost over £1,000, and the one I got secondhand was about £150, I believe. That's insane to me. Like, the baby things you can buy are just crazy expensive, and honestly I'm not sure that they're always worth that much. And also expensive kids clothes. I feel like it's the same, and I don't tend to buy expensive clothes for my kids because, for one, they get ruined. Obviously they're gonna play in the mud with them anyway and jump in muddy puddles, which is what they're supposed to do anyway. But also they grow out of them so quickly. They grow in size, especially when they're newborns and babies. They just go through clothes so quickly that it's pointless to buy really expensive ones. And so what we do nowadays is we actually buy a lot from Vinted. So sometimes I'll buy a bundle, and that means we can save so much money on kids' clothes. One thing that also used to get me a lot, and I feel like it still does sometimes, is the influencer trap. And I'm sure when you scroll on social media, you notice this too, because you see so many people say, this is a must-have, these are my latest must-haves for summer. They pick a piece of clothing and they say, I'm gonna wear this so much, or this is such great quality, before they've even washed it once to see if it actually is. And there's run, don't walk, and all of these sort of messages that I think they just push us to do a lot of impulse buys that we are going to regret. And I don't think all influencers have bad intentions. It's just kind of part of how the business works, I guess. But I do think for me, I just try to be intentional myself. I cannot control what they do online, but I can control who I follow. I can control the kind of things that I do, like my habits. And so for me, I might see things on an influencer that I really like, and I think that might be a good purchase for me. But what I have changed about myself is I will put things on a wish list. So just give myself a bit of a pause and a step back to think, does this actually go with my wardrobe? Does this go with my style, with what I generally like to wear? Or does it just look cute on that influencer? And I've also learned there's no such thing as a must-have. You don't have to have anything that they do. And also, is it really a must-have if every other week they have a new haul of things that they bought that are now the new must-haves? Wealth is invisible and boring. This is also something I learned from the Psychology of Money book. And basically he says that building wealth is kind of boring. It's not actually about doing much with your money and moving it from one thing to another or doing doing all of these crazy trading things or whatever things people do, but it's more about being more mindful with your spending and also letting things compound in time. So like putting some money in investments, like for example S&P 500, and then just leaving it there so that it compounds in time. And so actually building wealth is kind of boring because you're just leaving it there and letting it sit, as compared to all the flashy things that you see other people do that make you assume they are wealthy or have a lot of money, but actually that kind of wealth is usually invisible. Don't impress people. We are often spending money just to impress other people, and I think sometimes we do this even subconsciously, and I know I used to do this too, and I think I still do sometimes to a certain degree, because it's probably part of our kind of human psychology. But you know, we don't really need to impress people by the way we look or the car we drive or the bag we carry. Oftentimes we are trying to impress strangers that we'll never see again. And the thing about it is that those people aren't even looking. Like, most people are more focused on themselves and kind of how they are perceived, as opposed to noticing everybody around them and how they are doing. And once I learned about this spotlight effect, it really changed things for me, because I used to be so anxious about how I was perceived and how, you know, what people thought of me. I was definitely a people pleaser. And then you realize that actually, if you look around you in a crowded room, most people are thinking about themselves and how they are perceived by the other people in their room. And so isn't it crazy how we're all just kind of sitting there being a bit anxious about what everybody else thinks of us, and then the person next to you thinks the same thing about what other people think of them? That to me actually felt very freeing, and it kind of gave me permission to just be myself. And I'm not saying I don't care what people think of me anymore. I think to some degree that's always going to be there, but I definitely care just a bit less. There's also lifestyle inflation that's been talked a lot about, and it's, you know, this concept of whenever you earn more money, you also start spending more money. So basically every pay rise you get just disappears into this slightly fancier lifestyle that you get to. But actually, your daily life doesn't really change just by having a new car or having a new handbag or having new clothes. Because I think the way you really change your life is by having that financial freedom and having more flexibility, so that maybe you can work less hours in a week, or you can have more freedom with your time. And so for me, that's kind of why I started building this online business thing as well, because it wasn't that I wanted to be rich, and I do make my full-time income from this right now, but to be honest, even if I made 10 times my income right now, I would not want a designer bag. I don't think I would want a new car. I'm not sure about my husband, but I wouldn't want a new car. The whole reason why I started working as a creator online is just because I wanted more freedom with my time, more freedom with my kids, to be a more present mom. Those were kind of the things I valued. And I think even if I did make more money, I don't think I would want my days to be much different. I would still spend most of my time with my family and my kids. I would still want to do the school runs and be with them. I would still make my videos because I truly love chatting to you. So I think having a think about that kind of ideal day and what that would look like can be such a good motivator to save some of that money so that we don't give into that lifestyle creep and lifestyle inflation. There's also the Diderot effect. When you buy a new pair of shoes, all of a sudden the clothes you have in your wardrobe maybe don't necessarily match that. So maybe the jeans don't look right with those shoes, and so now you need new jeans. And when you have the shoes and the jeans, then you realize actually maybe a different top would go with that as well. And so the Diderot effect is basically how one purchase just tends to lead to a lot of other purchases on the back of it. And this means that we kind of end up on this treadmill of constantly upgrading things. One thing I'm also trying to be mindful of is that I just don't want to be on the treadmill, because there will always be a newer bag that's trending, or a new viral thing that everybody's buying, or a new better car. All of these possessions that we don't really need, that don't actually make a big difference to our lives. Yes, it might be an exciting purchase at first, but that excitement tends to wear off quite quickly, and then basically our life still looks the same. And I think even just that, trying to get off the treadmill and not feeling the need to give in to all of these trending things is actually quite freeing. And the reason why we do all of these things is not to be extremely frugal, is not to live a life that's very scarce and we feel like we're restricted. It's more about freedom. It's having the freedom to walk away from a job that you hate, or not have to work a 9 to 5 if you don't want to, or having the freedom to be at your kids' school when they need you, or being able to go through an emergency easily if needed. For example, last year, We had an electrical emergency in our house because our electric fuse box had melted at the top. And so obviously there was a fire hazard. We had an electrician come over really quickly and he had to basically change the whole electrical fuse box thingy. The whole process and the new box cost over £1,000. And because we already had that money in savings, obviously it's not like I'm happy to pay $1,000 for that. It's not where I would have ideally liked my money to go. But we had it there, we were able to use it and move on with our day. And that sort of emergency saving can give you so much peace of mind. And I also think just having less things in general can lead to a calmer home and life. So, just having less stuff in your home means that there are fewer things that you need to insure or to maintain or to clean or to upgrade, because eventually we do feel the need to upgrade certain things in our home. And so just having less and being more intentional with the things that we keep and making sure we keep things that do bring value to us, things that are not just stashed away in a cupboard, that's the kind of thing that actually makes a huge difference to not only how your home looks, but also to your budget as well. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today. I'll see you in the next one when coffee is on me.